everybody, Brian from Minnesota Creek Honey. Today we're going to talk about an illegal way to treat for mites in your hives. If anybody's gone on the internet, done any research around and read Scientific Researching, the website with Randy Oliver, you'll know that he's been working for the last couple years on a research permit for the use of oxalic acid in an extended release treatment protocol. And what he's found out in his research, that if you have oxalic acid in your hive, in a way that the bees can interact with it and move it around the hive and keep it in the hive for an extended period of time, it won't actually kill off all of the mites, but it'll make it hard for them to reproduce as quickly. And he's found out that if you do a big treatment in the spring, knock your mites right down to almost none, and then you put an extended release oxalic acid in the hive throughout the summer months, during honey production and all that stuff, the extended release oxalic acid will actually mess with the mite's ability to mate and breed, and it'll help keep the mite levels low. It won't actually make it down. So this is not something you could use as a only treatment for mites. If you have high mites and put this in there, it's not going to reduce your mite level at all. It'll help keep your mite level at a low level. And normally throughout the year, your mites will be low in the spring after your treatment. You'll throw your honey supers on, and throughout the summer they'll start creeping up, and then like escalate at the end of the year into a ski slope of mites. Where he found with the extended release oxalic acid, if you knock your mites down really low in the spring, put the extended release on, throw your honey supers on top, that the extended release actually keeps the mites fairly low. And instead of the mite level going up on a steep ramp or incline of population growth, they actually stay at a lower level and increase slowly throughout the summer months. And what this treatment could do is allow us to treat our beehives ongoing throughout the summer, not to eradicate the mites, but to actually keep them at a low enough level they can't really infest the beehives to the point where the bees get really sick before fall, when we can take our honey supers off and treat them with a whole bunch of different medications. I must say again, this is completely illegal in Ontario, in Canada to use. It's also illegal in the US, except for people that have research grants in the US. They do use this method in New Zealand. So in New Zealand, this method has actually been approved. And you can use oxalic acid in your hives throughout honey collection, honey production. So it's been approved there. Also in South America, there's a company, I believe Brazil, I think, that makes a product called Allen Cap. Allen Cap is a oxalic acid glycerin extended release strip that you put into your hive, that is the similar method to this. And it's approved for use in a bunch of countries, not Canada, not the US. Anyway, so we're going to go through the procedure, and I'm going to show you how to make the extended release pads with oxalic acid, glycerin, and these cheapy Swedish cloth pads. You can buy them on the internet. We sell them in the shop. I'll put a link down below. The Swedish pads are nice, and he uses, Randy Oliver uses them because they work well, and they are made from cellulose fibers, so they are biodegradable. So you could treat your hive. The bees will eventually chew them up, throw them out the front door, and you don't have to worry about polluting the environment any more than we already do. So I'm going to walk you through how to make Randy Oliver's extended release pads and how to use them on your hive, although you're not allowed to. If you'd like to like, subscribe, and share the video, I'd really appreciate it. and that. So let's go ahead from here. There are a few things you'll need to make the extended release oxalic acid pads. First off, and most importantly, you'll need oxalic acid. We carry oxalic acid in the shop, everything from 140 gram packages right up to 25 kilogram pails. You'll need a vegetable glycerin. You want a pure vegetable glycerin, food grade. And you'll need Swedish sponges. You can buy them on Amazon. We also have them in the shop. The link's down below. And the Swedish sponges are just a cellulose pad that will absorb liquid. You'll need a scale. All the recipe is done by weight. Some kind of a spoon, a stainless steel pot, and a heating element that works very well. You'll also need some kind of a container, and these containers are Sterilite containers that I found at Canadian Tire. And you'll need a container that is going to be the width of your Swedish sponges, so you can put your Swedish sponges in the container, line them up to put them in, with a tight fitting lid. So once you get it done, you want to put the lid over top of it. I really like these little tiny element ones here because they have the convection ones, because they have actually a temperature you can put on it. So because we don't want the temperature to go above 170 Fahrenheit, I can really ensure I can put the temperature at something like 140 or 150, so the temperature will never get above that. Important not to heat oxalic acid up above 170 Fahrenheit because it'll actually molecularly change at that point in time. So you want to keep the temperature below 160, 150. And we're going to agitate it continuously so you don't get hot spots on the bottom when it is in there until it does incorporate and go into full suspension with the vegetable glycerin. So the first thing we need to do is we need to take our Swedish sponges. This is the full treatment for one beehive. So the full one Swedish sponge is the full treatment. And to use them, we cut the Swedish sponge in half into two approximately 7-inch wide by 3.5 inch thick sponges. So the first thing we need to do is cut all of these sponges in half. And follow me along. We'll cut them in half really quick, maybe get them lined up, and then we'll be back with the rest of the recipe. Well, that was fun. I cut up 50 of the pads. So I've cut one pad in half, and I've made 50 of those. So we have 100 strips now, being 50 of the Swedish sponges. So Randy Oliver's recipe is 50 grams oxalic acid, 50 grams vegetable glycerin, and one of the full Swedish towels. We're going to cut these Swedish towels in half. So this one towel is going to be 2 halves. So because we cut it in half, the actual amount absorbed into each towel is going to be 25 grams of oxalic acid, 25 grams of vegetable glycerin into each half. Okay. Now, because we cut up 50 Swedish towels, that is 100 halves. And if we take that recipe, that 25 grams of oxalic acid, 25 grams vegetable glycerin, and we have 100 halves, we know now, doing a little bit of math, that we need to have 2,500 grams of vegetable glycerin, 2,500 grams of oxalic acid in our mixture to impregnate 100 towels. If you were going to do 10 halves, so you had 5 hives at home, you needed 5 treatments, you would take 5 of these towels, cut them in half, make 10 towels or 10 halves. You'd multiply that 25 grams of each. And you would need, for 5 full towels or 10 halves, you would need 250 grams of oxalic acid and 250 grams of vegetable glycerin to make 10 halves that would treat 5 beehives. The 100 halves here that we have over here will treat 50 full beehives. So you'll have to do a little bit of math when you're figuring this out to make sure you have the recipe right. And it's very simple. If you have a full Swedish towel, you cut it in half, you have 2, and for every half, the recipe is 25 grams vegetable glycerin, 25 grams oxalic acid, and then the treatment for 1 beehive is 2 of those halves. So make sure you have that recipe figured out before you go any further. Double check your math. You want to make sure you treat your hives and don't do anything detrimental to them. And so now what we're going to do is take our scale and we're going to weigh out, firstly, 2,500 grams of oxalic acid. We're going to put that in our pot. And then we're going to weigh out 2,500 grams of vegetable glycerin to put in our pot. So we'll scoop out our oxalic acid with a scoop. We have our bucket sitting on our scale. I've tared out it, so if you've never used one of these before, you put something on there, hit the tear. It'll zero it so the bucket doesn't weigh anything. Now we're going to weigh out our 2,500 grams of oxalic acid into the bucket. So we're at 4,900, 1,400 grams. We're at 1,900 grams, 2,300, 24, whoops. We have 2,500, exactly, 2,503. I'm pretty much okay with that. 2,502 grams. So we have 2,500 grams of oxalic acid. We're going to pick that up and put it into a cold pan. So the oven's not on. That's going into a cold pan. We're going to put our bucket back on the scale. Make sure it's tared out, so it's at 0 now. And now we're going to weigh up 2,500 grams of our vegetable glycerin into the pail. And slowly go up. We're at 1,200, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, oops, 2,502, 2,503. I think Randy Oliver would be okay with a 1 gram differential. So I'm going to take that 2,500 grams of vegetable glycerin, gently pour it in. I don't want to create a cloud of oxalic acid dust. So I'm going to gently pour that in. I'm going to scrape the container out because there's probably 50 or 100 grams of oxalic acid, of vegetable glycerin in the container. So I'm going to put the phone down, scrape the container out to make sure our mixture is the right consistency, and I'll be right back. So we have all our glycerin scraped off into the pot. We have our 2,500 grams of oxalic acid, or 2,500 grams of vegetable glycerin. I'm going to slowly, I still haven't turned the heat on. I'm going to slowly incorporate this a little bit so that it's not just powder oxalic acid on the bottom of the pot when I turn the heat on. So I'm going to slowly stir this around. It's a lot easier said than done with one hand. So just trying to incorporate the powder a little bit so that it's some kind of a mixture. You'll notice it doesn't incorporate very well at this temperature. So at this temperature, the oxalic acid is not really dissolving into the glycerin. It's just absorbing some of the glycerin. So we've incorporated that a little bit. So we have the oxalic acid blended right now with the glycerin. You notice how cloudy it is. So a very cloudy white mixture. Almost looks like cake icing in there. So we got that stirred in there a little bit. The other thing you'll need that I forgot to mention is a thermometer. So I have a thermometer here. I'm going to take the temperature probe, stick it in the oxalic acid. So that probe's in there. It's now going to give me the temperature of the oxalic acid. We're currently quite chilly at 54 degrees Fahrenheit. In there. And now we're going to set our temperature on our stove. So I'm going to turn it on. We talked about oxalic acid being, you can't overheat it, so you don't want to heat it above 170 Fahrenheit. So I'm going to set the temperature on my element to 150. So this element here, it's kind of nice that it actually has a temperature on it that won't heat the element higher than that temperature. I'm also have my probe in there to measure the temperature of the actual mixture. And now what I'm going to do is, as it's heating, I'm just going to continually sort of stir this around and agitate it to disperse the heat, so the heat doesn't build up in one spot on the bottom, and it heats up evenly. And you'll want to stir this, not continuously, but you want to really keep an eye on it. Stir it every little while, or and never leave this unattended. So don't walk away and do anything else. When I'm doing this, I just like to sit here and stir it around. While we're doing this and waiting for this to incorporate or turn into a solution, what we can do is talk about Varroa Mite and I guess our inability as beekeepers to treat our bees appropriately, I think. I think the world of beekeeping and the agricultural community, those people in the government that decide what we have to do to look after our bees, or what we're allowed to do to look after our bees, have to look at beekeeping and look at it more as a livestock, and how do you keep your livestock alive so that you can create a crop. And our crop is honey, pollen, and pollination services. I think beekeeping doesn't get very much of attention from governments because it's such a small part of the agricultural money that's raised in a country, compared to something like soybeans and corn, cattle, milk, things like that. So I think the governments have to really allow us to have the tools so that we can raise a livestock and keep it healthy throughout its growing season, so that by the time winter comes along, we have a healthy bee population going into winter. And the downfall currently is we do have an arsenal of, I guess, medications or pesticides and different things that can treat Varroa Mite. But some of them aren't appropriately allowed or able to be treated in the wintertime or in the summertime when we're collecting honey. So things like Apivar, Apistan, those pesticidal ones, you can't have them on at all during your honey treatment. Currently in Canada, oxalic acid has a 0-day withdrawal time, which means you can treat, but you can't have your honey supers on. And we have, I believe, Hop Guard that is allowed to be used with honey supers on. And we have formic acid that is allowed to be used, or Formic Pro that's allowed to be used with honey supers on. Formic Pro works fantastic for mite control. But one thing it does do is it shuts your queen down for a little bit after treatment. So you really don't want to shut your queen down in the middle of your honey flow. It will kill the mites off, but it will slow your queen down or slow your colony size down. So that's obviously something that's not really appropriate for a industry that's struggling and trying to make money. We need to maximize our summer production so that we can make that money. Oxalic acid is something that's allowed to be in the hive in a few countries during honey production. It is also existing in the hive in normal conditions, in lower levels. It does dissipate, so when it's in the hive, it doesn't build up. There's no residual amounts that build up in your hive. So there is no real reason why we can't use oxalic acid in the hive, because if you use it in your hive, it'll dissipate and won't be there after it's been used. So I don't really understand what the government's doing or why the government isn't allowing us to use these things. I guess because there's not much money involved, so a lot of the pesticide companies will not invest a bunch of money in getting oxalic acid approved in a way that you can just sit at home, buy some Swedish sponges and make a treatment, a long-lasting treatment that will help keep your mite levels low through the production season. And I think as beekeepers, we have to start looking at our hives that way and not just, I need to treat my hives and knock the mites down every once in a while. I need to treat my hives in a way that is going to make sure that those mite levels stay low forever. So in an ideal situation, I know we're never going to get rid of our mites 100%, but in an ideal situation, our mite levels should never exceed 1%. And even that might be too high. So if we can have something in our beekeeping arsenal that would allow us to treat in the spring, knock them down, knock that population down as it came out of winter, treat in the fall, knock them down again before they go into winter. And then in the growing season throughout the year when we're collecting honey, have a treatment we can keep on that will maintain the mite levels. So it's not going to actually knock them down, but it will maintain the level at a low enough level that by the time we're allowed to knock them down with a more harsh chemical, like the pesticidal strips, or a chemical that shuts the queen down, like formic acid, which we don't want to shut down in the middle of our growing season. Until we can use those, something like this that you can put on your hives that will not really be harsh for the hive. It will not really knock the mites down, but it will maintain them at a level. So if you knock them well down in the spring and then put this on, and if it keeps those levels down throughout the whole honey production season, and you can take the honey supers off in the fall, what a fantastic world that would be, eh? It'd almost be like you went back to the 70s and 80s when there was no mites, and your bees were healthy and could live through any winter. And if they're not healthy in the growing season, if they're not healthy by fall, they definitely have less chance of being alive in the spring. And it's a shame that something as simple as this cannot be used in the hive. So we're going through this whole procedure here, but I'm not allowed to put these in the hive when I'm completed. Anyways, enough rambling with me. This is going to take a little while. I'm going to put the phone down here, and I'll be back when it's almost ready to show you the transition from a cloudy substance like this into the clear suspension that is created once the oxalic acid gets up to temperature. And this little bit of time I've been rambling, the temperature's gone up to 88 Fahrenheit. It should start clearing at about 110 Fahrenheit and might not be completely clear till 130 or 140 Fahrenheit. But we'll be back at that time. So we're back here. It's been 15 minutes or so since I last spoke to you. Just sitting here swirling it around. You can see that it's already cleared up quite a bit, so it's not as white. Looks a little more translucent. The internal temperature is up in around the 120 degrees market. Every once in a while I'm just swishing the probe around, so the temperature will go up and down if I miss it, and it sits on the bottom of the pot. That's why it's important to keep stirring and agitating it, because if you just let it sit there, the bottom of the pot, the oxalic acid mixture at the bottom of the pot can get hotter than that 170 that you want. So it's sort of a constant swish around. And you can see it's really, as we're talking, it's really clearing up here. As it gets closer to that 130, 140 mark, it should go from a cloud mixture to a complete clear solution. And we'll be back when it does go clear. I just wanted to give you an update on this. And there we go. Probably about 20-25 minutes this took. It's went completely clear. And you can see right to the bottom. Doesn't look like there's anything really in there. It almost looks like a sugar syrup solution. I'm going to shut the stove off or the oven off. So we're shut off now. And then what I'm going to do now, bang off my thing, pull my probe out. Again, wearing my my gloves. This is now an acid solution. It's the oxalic acid mixed with the glycerin. And then I'm going to safely pull the oxalic acid off the element. And I have my my Swedish sponges cut up and done nicely in here. And I'm going to slowly just pour this over top of my Swedish sponges in this container. So I'm going to pour the full amount. Now when you look at it, you go, wow, there's a lot of liquid in there. Doesn't look like it should actually fit in here. But these Swedish sponges will absorb all of that oxalic acid and swell up. So we've got all the oxalic acid in there. We're going to move these around a little bit. Make sure the oxalic acid can get in between them. And then we're going to let them sit here for a little bit. And then after a little while, I'm going to take them out and just flip them over. So the top is now on the bottom. The oxalic acid is a little bit warm. It's only 140 degrees Fahrenheit, so not warm enough to burn your fingers, just warm enough to feel lovely. So I'm turning these sponges over to get the top side on the bottom to make sure that the oxalic acid solution can absorb all the way into and through these pads. And the pads will be homogeneous as far as how much the dispersal goes in them. So they are all in there now. Top is on the bottom. That's going to soak in, and they'll soak up that little bit in the bottom. You can see even now that was filled almost to the top, and now there's just a tiny little bit in the bottom here. I'm going to take the lid, put the lid on, so nothing can fly into it and people don't accidentally spill it. And then we're going to let that sit there overnight or for a couple days. And you need to allow that oxalic acid glycerin mixture to soak into the pads while it's hot. So you need to do that flip method right after you pour it in. While it's still hot, you need to flip them over. You need it to absorb all the oxalic acid, and it's hot because as the glycerin mixture cools down, it'll turn much more solid into a paste almost. And it'll be absorbed into those pads. So we're going to let that sit there for a little bit. And then we'll go out and we'll show you how you're not allowed to use these on your beehives in Canada, the US, and a whole bunch of other countries, so that you know what not to do after you've made them. So it's been about 15 minutes. And if you can see, if I pulled them out, they've absorbed every little bit of the glycerin mixture in there. The pads, even if I go to the center, pull a few out, they're absorbed right in, right saturated with the glycerin there. Now we have to let this cool down. So you'll have this sit here for 24, 48 hours, something like that. You want it to cool right down. And as it cools down, the glycerin will actually gel up quite a bit. And the pads will, when you pull them out, won't drip, won't anything. And you can take that pad, put it on the hive. The sad part is we can't use them. I spent that time putting these together. The cost, you're looking, glycerin is probably the most expensive thing in here. The cost of this bin to treat, this will treat here 50 hives. There's 100 strips in this. Probably the total cost of this would be way less than 80 bucks Canadian. So, you can treat 50 hives for $80 Canadian. Your $1.60 a hive. It'll treat your hives for a month. And I can't put them on the hives. A lot of other countries you can use it or use similar things. New Zealand, has a blank exemption on the use of oxalic acid, so they can use oxalic acid in your hive. It doesn't tell you how you can use it. So they can make these pads up or similar pads up, and they can use them in their beehives to treat the Varroa Mite. I think the beekeeping organizations in Ontario, the OBA, the Ontario Beekeeping Association, all the Western Canada associations should be hitting up, firstly, OMAFRA, get OMAFRA on our sides, get your local, agricultural groups on our sides, and as a whole of organizations, go to the government, use our combined resources to get something like this, the research done on it, so that we can get it passed in Canada, US, other countries, and help us hurdle our way through the regulations. I think if the OBA got a hold of this, spent some of the resources and time to do some research on this, filled the paperwork out, got it approved in Canada or in Ontario, I think it could only help the beekeeping industry. We have a hard time keeping our bees alive through the winter. And the biggest detriment to beekeeping in Ontario, in Canada, in the world is Varroa Mite. So anything we can do to help our hives be healthy, reduce our numbers of Varroa Mites in the hive for a lengthy amount of time, not just in blips and let it grow and then knock it down. If we can actually maintain a level that the bees can thrive at, I think that's the first step. So we're out in the just our unused equipment. So we're in the yard. You're not allowed to, like I said, use this on your beehives in the US or Canada. So I can't really show you how to put this stuff on a live beehive, because that would be illegal to put it on a live beehive. So I've set up a mock beehive here. And I've set it up as if you're doing a double deep beehive. So you have a double deep brood chamber, bottom board with your lid on top. And if you were going to put it on the hive, this application is only good to put on the hive when your bees are active. And they have to be actively moving up and down in your beehive. So if you're running a single deep beehive, you can't just put them on top of the single deep bars, because the bees aren't moving up and down past those pads. They're just staying below that. So on a single deep beehive, you couldn't put these on until the bees are actively collecting honey, and you have your honey supers on. Then they're coming in the hive, moving up through the brood chamber and into the honey supers, and they're passing the pads. In a double deep brood chamber, you could use these earlier in the season when the bees are building up and they've built up enough, but they're not ready to put the honey supers on. But you've already did your main treatment You're ready to put your honey supers on. Now you can put the oxalic acid strips on. And how you would put them on is pull your box apart. I'm not wearing gloves. These are just plain pads. They do not have anything on them. You would use your, if you're using the pads you've already prepared, you would have some type of acid resistant glove on them. So what you do is you go into your beehive. You're running a double deep. You would simply pick up your top box, take one of the pads, stick it near the front, take another pad, stick it near the back. Then you would put your boxes back together, put your queen excluder on, honey supers on top of your queen excluder, put your lid on. Now you can leave those pads in there for about 30 days. The treatment will last in the pads for that long, so that glycerin mixture is absorbed into those pads. As the bees walk over top of them and touch them, they're spreading that oxalic acid glycerin mixture around the hive, and it'll take about 30 days before that mixture is exhausted out of your pads. During the process, the bees will chew on the pads, throw them out the front door. They may propolize some of the pads, things like that. But those now can stay in your double deep hive with your honey supers on throughout the growing season to treat your mites. If you're running a single deep beehive, so your brood chamber is in one box with your lid on, to treat them, you would wait till you're ready to put your second box on. You take your lid off, put an extended release pad on the front and the back, put your queen excluder on, then put your honey supers on top of that. It has to have a second box on it so that the bees will travel up past those pads and go back down past those pads so they can be exposed to the pads. And that is how you treat with your oxalic acid extended release pad. You put them on your hive, you leave them for about 30 days. At the end of the 30 days, those pads will be exhausted. They're made from a natural material that is biodegradable. The bees will eventually pull them apart, throw them out the front door. They'll degrade into the soil. And it from the research Randy Oliver has done, it's a very effective way to maintain your mite level at a very low level throughout the growing season when you're collecting honey. So that by the time you go into fall, pull your honey supers off, your mite levels are already extremely low. They've been extremely low through the whole summer. Your bees thus are healthier. There'll be less viruses that were passed on by the Varroa Mite. And then after honey season's done, you can knock them down really good, the Varroa Mite really good, with some of those treatments that are not allowed to be in the hive during honey production or are detrimental to honey production, like formic acid in the middle of the summer, which will make your queen stop laying for a period of time and disrupt your hive. So they might have a week or so where they're not really collecting that much honey. So it is a very promising treatment. Hopefully the governments get involved or the beekeeping organizations get involved to get a treatment such as this or similar to this, or spend the money on a little more research to come up with a better treatment that will help our bees be healthy through the growing season so that they can be healthy going into winter and will actually have a fighting chance as beekeepers to keep our bees alive through winter so that we don't have to struggle so hard in the spring. Anyways, Brian at Innisfil Creek Honey. We're always at the shop. I'm always here to help. If you do have any questions or comments, comment below. I'll try to answer as many as I can. Like I said, like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It'd be nice to get a little more exposure. Anyways, everybody get the hell outside. Beautiful countries we live in.
we only get a few months of summer. Have a good one.